Welcome to Birth Words. This is episode number 43. Today we're going to talk about affirmations that you can use to remind yourself of your role as agent giving birth.
Welcome to Birth Words. Words are powerful. What are you doing with yours? In this podcast, birth doula and applied linguistics scholar Sara invites you to be intentional, reflective, and empowering with your language as we come together to honor those who give birth. The work of Birth Words is to elevate the language surrounding pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum period. Nothing in this podcast should be taken as medical advice.
Welcome to the podcast. So today's episode is going to be a little bit of a mashup of two previous episodes. I'm looking back at episode 15, Affirmations, where we talked about what an affirmation is and what we're doing linguistically when we make affirmations in birth. And I'm also going to be thinking back to episode 41 from just 2 weeks ago, where we talked about agentive language. That is putting yourself as the subject, as the person doing the action when we talk about giving birth. And I hope that, like that last episode I referenced, 41, agentive, I hope that this episode will also give some reassurance and confidence to those who are giving birth during this crazy, unprecedented time with the COVID-19 pandemic. So as I talked about in episode 41 back 2 weeks ago, this is a kind of wild time to be giving birth. There is a lot going on that is out of our control, and many people are having to revisit their birth plans and preferences and reconsider what's truly important and what things are things that they're willing to sacrifice given the circumstances at many hospitals. Some people are having to change the support people they're having in the room with them. Others are choosing to change where they're giving birth so that they don't have those restrictions. Others don't have that option. And many people who are giving birth feel just generally that they've lost any sense of control during this wild situation. But in episode 41, and again today, I reminded you that regardless of the circumstances currently, as you give birth, you are still, as we quote Ina May Gaskin, the central agent in the age-old drama, in the ancient drama of life bringing forth new life. You continue to play that pivotal, critical role as the one bringing life into the world. And so I encouraged you in episode 41 to remember that in the way that you speak about your birth, as you prepare for it and as you experience it and as you look back on it during these times. And so today we're going to think a little bit about birth affirmations, which we talked about in episode 15, and how we can use affirmations to remind us of our power as agents involved in this work, as the ones acting and bringing forth life. So remember back in episode 15, and if you don't remember or haven't heard it, go back and take a few minutes to listen to it. I'll give a brief summary here. We talked in episode 15 about affirmations and how the act of writing and using a birth affirmation relates to some linguistic theories. So one thing we talked about is speech act theory. And in speech act theory, we talk about how each utterance, everything that somebody says, has three forces: the illocutionary force, the locutionary force, and the perlocutionary force. These three forces are part of anything that you say. So illocutionary means the intent of what you're saying. Locutionary means the form of what you're saying, and perlocutionary means the effect. So the illocutionary force of an affirmation is to affirm. Its intent is to affirm a truth. And as the one giving birth, it's important that the things that you write in affirmations, that you say to yourself and have others say to you, are truths that are meaningful and personal to you as you affirm them to yourself. The locutionary force also of a birth affirmation is to affirm. The form is an affirmation. We align the form of the utterance, the thing that we're saying, with its intent. So while most affirmations don't start with the phrase, I affirm, they're phrased as statements, right? Not as questions or requests or demands. They're formed as statements of affirmations of truth. For instance, I open and release as my baby descends. That affirmation is in the form of a statement of truth. And then the perlocutionary force, the effect of an affirmation, of course, is to give that birth giver strength and focus, and to do what the affirmation is inviting her to do, to open and release as baby descends, or whatever the case is for the specific affirmation. So that was kind of a blow through of a quick overview of episode 15 and what we talked about there. We talked about how this is really powerful when we make affirmations in which these three forces, the intent, the form, and the effect, are so aligned. It's something that doesn't often happen when we speak. We're often a lot less direct in the way that we speak. We often phrase requests or questions as statements, such as, oh, there sure are a lot of toys on the floor, to your children, right? It's really a request for them to clean, but it's phrased less directly. There are many other examples, but often when we speak, we don't align these forces. I think that one thing that makes affirmations powerful is that these three forces, again, the intent, the form, and the effect, are aligned when they work properly. And then we also talked about Goffman's framework of when somebody speaks, there's the animator, the author, and the principal. The animator is the one moving their mouth, making the words come out. The author is the one who wrote the words, and the principal is the one who takes responsibility for them. So in various circumstances throughout life, author, animator, and principal sometimes align and sometimes don't. A president often has speech writers who write the speech for him. And although he acts as both animator, the one talking, and principal, the one taking responsibility for the words that come out of his mouth, he's not often actually the author. In other instances, we may say things that we are not the author of, or that we don't necessarily believe or take responsibility for. So in the context of affirmations, I believe that it's most effective, again, when all three of these things, author, animator, and principal, are aligned, that you are the one who wrote your birth affirmation. And if you found it somewhere else and you feel like, oh, they put words to something that I couldn't, then that's a good way to do that as well. But I think it can be really, truly most powerful if you can think within yourself about your beliefs about birth and your feelings and your expectations, and form those into words for yourself to hold on to that power and to truly be an author for that affirmation. So again, if that's aligned with the other two roles that a speaker can take, I really think there's a great power in it. So if you're the author of your affirmations, the animator, speaking them to yourself, and this can happen throughout pregnancy. As you prepare for your birth, look in the mirror and say those things that you've written to yourself, that you're affirming to yourself the truths about your role in bringing life into the world. And then the principle, always taking responsibility for those affirmations that come out of your mouth. What do you feel so strongly that you can put your stamp of approval on? So again, let's align those three things, author, animator, and principle, to have the most power that we can in affirmations. So let's talk for a minute then about how we're going to mash up these two things: Agentive, birthgiver language from episode 41, and affirmations from episode 15. Again, this is a time where it's maybe difficult to hold on to or to be sure of many things, which is why it's increasingly important to find the power in the things that you are sure of and your own power, especially as you prepare to give birth or support those who are. So let's think about affirmations that you can write in this specific time if you're preparing to give birth, to remind you of the role you have as agent, making choices and bringing life into the world. So let's talk about affirmations. Let's talk about the form that these might take if we're really truly affirming your role as agent. I think your affirmation's probably going to start with the word I or my, or really be focused on the role that you're playing. And I don't know what your affirmations are going to be. I don't want to author your affirmations, but again, if you find some that do speak to you, then that's great and go with it. But I think you'll find a lot of power as you reach and look within yourself to find what those truths are. So let's start with the word I. I am, I believe, I feel, I love, I choose. I'm going to pause there because that one's incredibly strong. I choose. Think about those things. How would you fill in the blank as you prepare to give birth? I choose. What do you choose for yourself, for your baby, for your family, for the experience of bringing life into the world? I am. What do you believe about yourself and your power as a birth giver? I feel. What sorts of things, feelings, emotions, physical things, do you feel as you give birth or as you prepare to give birth? And these are just some idea seeds to get you started. But I invite you, as you go through this week, to think about the role that you play, the central role that you play in bringing life into the world, and how you can write, how you can author and animate and take responsibility for those affirmations that remind you of the truths that you hold dear. I am thinking of all of you as you're preparing to give birth, and those who are supporting people giving birth during this time and at all times. I am thinking of you and hope that you will find your power and your strength as you bring life.
If you're interested in sharing your ideas or experiences on the podcast, go to birthwords.com. If you're liking what you hear, please leave a review on your podcast app. For more resources about language for a better birth, subscribe to the monthly newsletter at birthwords.com and follow Birthwords on Instagram and Facebook.